Adam.
Hey.
You just were like
Every
creeping
time
on
we start
up.
every podcast episode, it's just you and I looking at each other being like, okay, so who's starting?
I would
Who's
just
gonna
like to
talk
say,
first?
though, thank goodness that I don't have, like, a little spiel.
Yeah.
Because little spiels that are really cheesy.
Welcome to the Wonder Jam podcast, where we help you upgrade your happiness and achieve your six-figure incomes. Like that?
Keep on listening.
Keep on.
I can't
trucking.
stand that stuff, so.
Yeah.
I'd rather be awkward.
You're not one for, neither of us is one for much like pageantry.
Jingle or jangle.
Jingle or jangle. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me
Oh,
today.
you're welcome. I'm thankful to be here.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you some questions today because one of the things we're doing in season 3 is you and I are a little bit kind of interviewing each other.
Yep.
And we're not having special guests,
True.
but we are the specialness.
True. That is so true.
Yeah. We got real like frustrated with sharing airtime with other people.
Yeah, we were just
I was like, oh my gosh, when do I get to talk next? You and I just wanted an opportunity for us to talk.
yeah,
Because we like that.
we do.
So I'm going to ask you some questions.
Hit me.
One of the most interesting things about you compared to other people who I've worked with is that in your work, you, as a creative person, as a designer, artist, photographer, person who makes things,
Keep going. No, I'm just kidding.
hip-hop mogul,
Oh, yeah.
and breakdancer,
Yes, true.
you handle feedback and critique better than almost any. I can't imagine an artist handling it as well as you do.
Well, thank you.
But I haven't worked with every artist in the world, obviously. I mean, so not disparaging anybody.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that because I think it's interesting. And it's something that we see young designers, artists, photographers. It's something that's difficult. It's something that freaks people out. They're like, what if a client says this? Or what if they don't like it? Or what if they ask for changes? Or
Right.
all of that stuff.
Right.
So one, tell me a little bit about, maybe just for the listeners who haven't hired us, talk a little bit about the scenarios where you receive feedback or critique from clients. And then two, talk a little bit about what things you keep in your mind as you're getting feedback or as you're listening. Like, talk a little bit about what keeps you kind of grounded or centered during those
Got it.
interactions.
Yeah, so we present all our work to our clients. If I sound a little sick, I'm still getting over.
Oh, very sick.
Oh, very sick. I'm still getting over the flu, which last episode we talked about being sick, if you want to check it out. But we present all our work to our clients in person or over screen share. So we're never just sending something to our clients via email.
Right.
And then they can actually give feedback in the moment, which is a challenge in and of itself. I mean, to be able to take in something new that someone made you and then give feedback is not for everyone. But we work through feedback with them in person. We'll maybe meet again, talk through stuff after they've sat with it for a week or so.
Sometimes we'll make changes and revisions in real time, just in front of them, open
Yeah.
up Photoshop, make
Yeah.
the changes.
True.
And other times,
Sometimes it takes a little bit longer.
yeah, just depending on what program or what we're doing.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I try to if I can.
we make them in front of them, right?
Yeah. And we started doing that a while ago. I mean, when we were first in this space, we were doing it. And I did it for efficiency at first, and I don't really like getting feedback via email. I can tend to take feedback poorly if I read it versus when someone says it to me. And so I like hearing it from their mouth.
Yeah, because you can see so much of you can hear their tone, or they might say something over email. A client might say, I don't like how dark that green is. Instead, you might be like, you might hear them say, does that dark green seem... And
You can hear more apprehension or hesitancy, or, they might just not be sure. So you're just left with misinterpreting less.
Yeah.
So some of the things that I refer back to in the moment are what I do isn't who I am. So I would say, you know, I can't speak for everyone, but I have other things that I love more than designing. I love to read. I like to relax. I love you, listener. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Adam.
Podcast listeners are your top
I
priority.
love them more than design. Yeah. And so, you know, if tomorrow was like, hey, can't design anymore, I would still be happy. I would be probably like, why can't I design?
Be
But
sad. Yeah, right.
I'd be confused.
Like, who's not letting me?
Yeah. And so I also feel like the creativity that I have within me can come out in different ways. I could paint, I could draw, you know, whatever. So the thing that I'm usually presenting isn't like my top passion in life. I have a passion for helping people in the form of design, but I'm not just usually designing on my own. So I think that's a little unique. Also, the thing that I'm making is not mine and it will change. So I'm making it for a client, and for the most part, they will then take it and use it, and it won't look the same way that I ever intended. I can sometimes feel my like controlling nature come in when a client lets me handle too much of their brand. And it probably is just better for me from the start for them to start to take it on themselves a lot faster than
Right.
me be in charge of every element or
Yeah.
every touch point. So I think those are the two things that I'm constantly referring back
That you're coming
to.
back to in the moment while you're thinking of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have a relationship with them. So I learned a lot about candor last year. I read a book about it and I started reading different articles and just asking people. And you can get really candid feedback from people that you care about. So our clients aren't strangers to me. I would go get a drink with them. I like supporting their lives. And for the most part, really trust their preferences. So when they give me feedback, it's like when your friend gives you feedback. You're not like offended because they're just some random stranger. If someone walked in from the street and gave me feedback, I would be like, I don't really care what you think. But thanks for coming in.
Yeah. You do a pretty good job of thinking about who does it really matter for. You know,
True.
who is it, like, who is this? I watch sometimes when you and I and a client are going through feedback together, I will be even more defensive than you are.
True.
Because you seem to very much, I'm trying to protect the quality that you first presented.
Right.
And I want to make sure that we don't drop off from there. But you're very much like, oh yeah, no, we can make changes. That's fine. This is for you. This is your thing. A client should want to tattoo it on their face, I always say. And so it's got to be for them. They have to be happy about it. They have to love it.
Yeah. I would also say, like, if you are a creative person and you struggle with feedback, think about all the work you've done over the past 2 years. And you don't hold as tightly or closely work that you did 2 years ago as you do right now. So the thing that you're presenting tomorrow or right now or today, you won't really care as much in a year or 2 weeks. You'll be working on something new. And so that to me, I think is important to remember.
What have you seen? What have, in your experience, because sometimes we get into feedback processes or revisions with clients where their feedback makes something way better. Talk a little bit about someone who's listening to this who might hire a creative person. How would you tell them to think about feedback in a way of actually making the stuff better and not just, ruining the designer or the creative person's work or controlling the whole thing?
Yeah, I would say if you are looking to hire someone who is designing or photographing or making something for you, approach feedback on behalf of your own client. So if you are hiring someone, but the whole point is that the new logo that someone is designing for you attracts the right customer, be willing to walk a little bit outside of just your own preferences. Obviously, use that time to give feedback to make sure that you like it, but be also thinking about your customers. So there have been times where I've had clients who are like, this might not be my favorite concept, but I really think that this is going to be what our future thinking, forward thinking client is going to like. I also think it's, it's important to ask questions versus just dictate. So what would it look like if it had a black background instead of a white background? It just helps it feel so much more collaborative than dictating things that you actually don't know what it's going to look like. And be willing to be wrong. So ask for feedback or ask for changes that are made. And once you see it, be okay with admitting that it's not what you thought it might look like.
Yeah.
Or, oh, that's not as good as I thought it would end up as.
Yeah, I've seen people be really clear about what they don't, we tell the story often. We had that one real client you did a concept that had a key in it and was like, they're like, I hate keys. Like that is great feedback.
Right.
Because someone could be like, I don't really, that one, sometimes I see in feedback people they're not direct. They don't say the truth.
Right.
They'll say something else like, oh, that one feels like too not modern enough. And you're like, okay, so am I going to try and make a key more modern, but actually you just hate keys?
Yeah.
Do you just hate purple? Then just say, I hate purple with all my heart, so I'd put no purple there.
Right.
And then I also think on the flip side, be honest with asking the designer, the person you trust, when we can get a good sense of when a client wants us to step up and say,
True.
You really want our opinion? Like, I'm going to give you all my opinion preferences.
Yeah.
It's good to know. It's good to get that green light or to get, somebody to say that.
And actually, when I was sick with the flu for like 5 days, I found myself being so nicely, brutally honest to our clients via email. I had a client ask about an opportunity that they thought might be a good thing for them. And I was like, no, like, you need to focus on this. And they're like, thank you for your wisdom. And there's so many times where you kind of get into this, especially via email, this method of like, that sounds great with 1 million exclamation points. And you just want people to feel encouraged. And design is different. So design feedback is different, but I wouldn't have minded if she had responded back like, I disagree.
Right.
Be willing to have someone disagree with you.
Yeah.
If people aren't disagreeing with you, then you're just surrounding yourself with people who are like,
yeah, you're not even getting
no
people's
spine.
wisdom. Yeah. Truth. You might as well go hire an artist on.
I remember the first time I decided to like embrace radical candor. I read the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott. We were in a meeting and Adam, you were like, you did such a good job in that meeting, but you rambled. And I remember thinking, we were in front of our whole team. They probably weren't even listening. But I was like, if you want to give feedback to other people, you have to be willing to get it.
Right.
And I was like, thank you for telling me that. But a year ago, I would have been like, I was not. Like, I didn't ramble, or I did great. And so I
said that to you after a meeting. Yeah.
You told me that
the way you told the story, I was just thinking of that I rambled, and I was like, no, I think
you
this
said you did a great job, but you rambled. So start practicing. Like, if you want to be able to give and get feedback from clients or from your business partners or from your employees or from whatever, in these little moments, be willing to also like practice. It's almost like practicing it.
Yeah.
It feels weird, but it's true.
No, I feel that. Tell me about younger artists, or we've had a bunch of interns who work here in the past. What are things they get wrong about hearing feedback or processing it or dealing with something a client wants?
I think the first would be that the assumption that the first attempt that you took to get something accomplished was the right one. Obviously, I think as a design, I'm going to talk about design in this moment.
Yeah.
You try a lot of different things before you actually get to the final presented piece. But why would that just be like the perfect solution?
Right.
And while I wrote down that I'm not a perfectionist in some of my notes because I'm not. I am 100% not a perfectionist. I'm kind of rambling right now. You can tell me that later as feedback, and I'll take it well. But Seth Godin talks about like rules for working in a studio, and one of it is very much like it has to be good enough to just ship it, basically. Right. Don't be afraid to ship it or something like that. We'll post it in our show notes because those are so good.
Does he talk about perfection is the enemy of done or enemy of good? Good
he
enough,
talks about
something. Great is the enemy of good enough.
It's like studio rules.
Developer Matt will say perfection is the enemy of done.
What does he say?
Like perfection is the enemy of done, meaning like we don't get things done when we
try
are
to
chasing
make it
perfection.
He also says some people are too much yet not enough.
Yeah, that's a great Matt quote.
It's my favorite phrase.
He's like, oh yeah, they're just like too much but not enough.
Oh, he says Seth Godin says obsess about appropriate quality, ignore perfection. And that's like that's me to a T. And so I see some people, younger designers or just people who can't take feedback, obsessing over the final piece that they present. And so when you do that and you feel like it's perfect, then of course you're going to get a reaction within yourself when you get feedback about it.
True.
Because you think it's perfect. I don't feel that way because I'm like, there's room for improvement.
Yeah.
Like the thing that
creativity is odd in that there's a lot of correct answers. Like there's not Nike would have been successful with a different logo.
Right.
You know, and I think it's difficult. One, it's difficult for people who make creative stuff to say that because it's kind of like our thing. Like it's what we're selling. Yeah. To be like, yeah, you should hire us. There's a million, but you could hire anybody and this would be good. Yeah. And be helpful. We're not that much, like we're not a better solution than another person. No. We're different maybe somehow, but.
For sure.
So that I think is difficult to admit. And I also think it's difficult because clients, when you're paying money for something, we want to feel like we're getting the right one or the best one or the whatever.
Or you're like milking it for all that you can get it. So I think that's the first thing is that just like loosen the grip a little bit off of your own work. I would say the other thing is you should be making other work that totally satisfies your soul.
I noticed that with you. There's a huge difference even in the way you present work. Yeah. When you're painting or when you're reading or writing or doing, or even when you're like into cooking, like when you have connected to a passion outside of that work that you're presenting, it's so different.
And I think that could even be true on a really like more micro level. I present a lot of different type of work in this business. So I'll share photos or I'll do a logo or a homepage. And I think even that variation of work also keeps me from being fragile in the feedback process because if I'm constantly presenting work and a client's like, I love these photos. And then I walk into a meeting and someone's like, maybe we could try this color. It's like, cool. I'm like dipping my hands in a lot of different bowls of water. That was a
lot of different bowls of water.
As I was doing this motion, I was like, I feel like I'm Catholic again. But I definitely feel like that is really key.
No, that's cool. Yeah. What are some of the best ways that you found to help clients get excited when you present your work? So in that, right before you receive feedback, you present your stuff. What have you learned as far as, for you, what works well to help clients get excited or clients to really buy into something? What are tips and tricks for those settings, for presenting your work?
Yeah, I feel like the first is matching the cadence and rhythm and energy of the client. So if someone is not like a high-pitched screamer, like don't come into it overwhelming them. I wouldn't want that. I'm not someone who's like, I'm not a woo girl. Like I'm not going to scream if someone shows me something great. So I wouldn't want someone to try to like overpower my own emotion.
You're not a jingle jangle person.
Yeah. I think I said it differently at the beginning. I said something like jingle to our jangle or something.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah.
You're not none of those.
No. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I talk about sort of what I'm about to show them, not necessarily the concepts, but I say, okay, there's going to be 3 concepts. Each concept has 4 slides, and this is why I show you different variations. If I'm showing branding, if I'm showing a website, I'll say, I'm going to walk through this pretty quickly just to show you all the key features and this, all the functionality. At the end, then I want you to just tell me everything.
Yeah.
So I'm giving them a little bit of like a guidelines on how to go through this with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just like shocking them and then leaving them with no rules.
The other thing I see designers do, or interns who work for us that's different than you, is people will spend hours, a designer will spend hours like pouring through a logo or a website or something they're designing and then show it to a client and think they could just show it and be like, and the client gets it. But what designers forget, or it's easy to forget, is that there's hours and hours and hours of decision making and trying things and process back and forth. So you in your head understand why green doesn't work, but a client would never just guess that.
Right.
And you didn't even guess that when you first started working through it.
Right.
And so I see so many, I see designers, Erica, who works with us, one of the things that we say to her often is just explain why your brain did the things that it did, or how it got to the place that it ended up getting.
Right.
Because she is pouring through, she has such a great attention to detail in her process.
Yeah.
And then she was presenting her logos and things and not describing very much. I was like, if you show people, like, explain why you did that, because there's a great story underneath of there that will help a client feel very connected to that work.
Yep.
But you got to share it. You can't.
But not too much.
You don't have to share everything.
Yeah.
But you've got to let them get excited about it.
Yeah.
I think about it like I think about the placebo effect a little bit of placebos work, and so sometimes when we get fake stuff, it still works because our brain is strong. And so I think when we're giving people a logo or photos, I want to do all of the things to give them a good product. And I also want to do I want to put all of the placebos around that as well that help people feel excited, happy to start using that new visual thing that we gave them.
Right.
Because it all helps it connect and resonate.
For sure.
What has been for you? Talk about some of the painstaking or difficult times you've worked through feedback. Because we haven't had anything, we've had nothing ever that has been like, this is complete shit. No. Like we've never had
right.
that extreme scary thing. It's all like nuanced.
Right. I think the thing, there's 2 different instances that I can think of. Not specific instances. I'm like totally blanking unless you can like alert me to one. Not the typical one. The typical one?
I don't even know. Yeah, say that one.
There was just a time where we worked with clients through like colors or things that are, I think colors are the hardest thing for me. I actually didn't study color theory. Shout out to my alma mater for not having that class. And
shout out.
And that was a negative shout out, by the way.
Shout out in.
Shout low.
Shout low?
Yeah, like out or like low. Like
that's not that low is not the opposite of out.
It could be.
It would be like in.
Shout in.
Yeah. Or like
shout in to Taylor University. No, I feel like color is the hardest thing for me because I don't design with like a passion for the choice of colors. I really want the client to feel very collaborative in that. So there have been times where we spend hours with clients going back and forth between colors.
Oh yeah, we had a couple hours session on like shades of green.
And so a lot of times I take the client, that's why I show everything in black and white first, and I want them to see it without color because they need to approve the design.
Yeah.
They can go into the field and like their everyday life and find color inspiration.
Yeah.
But But I would say the other type of feedback that can be painful is when we try to do work for people and they haven't asked for it, or if we skip our process.
Right.
And if we skip through our process, then they're left with just like, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And we have no real leg to stand on.
Yeah.
And I think that is like one of the most frustrating times, because you're providing work out of like the goodness of your heart, or you just feel excited about something. You think it can be a really great addition to something else that you're making.
Yeah. That's always that moment in the revision or feedback, or when we're reviewing things with clients. There's a moment where whatever they're asking for, they're like, oh, well, we should also do, like, where you, in your brain, you're like, okay, this is out of that. We're into a new project right now.
Yeah.
And there's this weird moment where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I've got to like say, I've got to like start charging you for some other thing.
Right. Or do I just like skip everything that I stand for?
And the client doesn't, our clients, we work with small businesses, they don't understand web hosting, or
Right.
they don't understand everything
Right.
that we do.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they'll be like, oh, we should add like this. It'd be cool if our blog did like blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And also we're like, oh, okay, that I understand that's a lot of functionality that is not what we
Totally.
thought it was going to be.
I also feel like feedback with photography, I don't get it a lot, but I get it with when I take pictures of people, because we are a flawed
Say more about this.
species, and everyone deals with self-loathing and hating themselves and loving themselves. And I'm at the point now where I get feedback from people and they say they like hate a photo. They hate the photos of themselves. They're always very clear that they love all the other photos. They love the style. And I really am at the point where I actually say, like, I really don't care. I mean, you don't have to use these photos, but it does not hurt my feelings.
Right.
It really crushed me for a while. Like, really bothered
I still remember
me.
one of the early ones were two women who would like score high if people were rating their beauty, right? Wrote us this email after we sent photos to them about like all the things they didn't like about the photos. And they had built a whole mood board about what they wanted all this stuff to look like. And then they came in and we were like, guys, the mood board and what we gave you and all that stuff, like it's lined up, and everything. We kind of even had to go through their feedback and explain to them why that feedback wasn't accurate. And it just turned into like, they didn't like themselves.
Yeah.
They didn't like love themselves very much.
So that was like there was like a hard period where that affected me, and I had to really back away from taking pictures of people. And it was great because it pushed me into food photography and, photography of objects and, commerce, things like that. And so I'm like almost grateful for the time, because it was like this feeling of like, I can't do this. Like, how do people do this for a living, where they just show these beautiful photos that they're proud of, and then the other person like rips themselves to shreds. That's still really hard for me.
Yeah.
But I find the most, I feel the most magical feeling when I do take pictures of people and they like share it and love it and make it their profile picture and want to get prints. It's just a really vulnerable thing. So
Yeah.
I plead to you, if you're listening to this and you get your picture taken by someone, you have a responsibility to try to love yourself like before seeing those photos, which I know is a huge struggle, and it's not something that you can just like flip a switch. But
I've learned through being on my side of it, of watching all of this, that if a photographer who I think is good takes a photo of me and I don't like it, I don't ever even say anything. And I still use the photo, just trusting that I'm probably too critical of myself and it's fine. You know,
like Michael, you caught that photo of me and I like shared it and people loved it. It's the most, we'll link it. It's the most, non-photogenic photo of anyone ever taken. But like, who cares? I don't know. I guess I just like don't care. We're getting
like
into a
most
whole
similar
nother
to
episode.
that like Beyonce Super Bowl photo.
Yeah,
that was like
it is.
She was very much like, I don't take this down.
She probably like sued people. I was more like willingly sharing it on my story, but I don't know. I guess I just think like, and maybe, I don't know, maybe like death can like alter that. If you've like had loss in your life, it doesn't matter what you look like in pictures.
Yeah.
Just get pictures taken of
Truth.
yourself.
We just,
Yeah.
you and going through losing your grandpa, even we've had close friends who lose parents or other people who are close to them, and all they do is they sit and go through photos, and nobody gives a shit about
No.
any of that.
No one's like,
stuff.
oh my gosh, look at this photo of my grandpa. What a
No, it's like
nerd.
I wish we sat around. Me, you, and Bobby sat around and with Liv, and we sat and watched your siblings. I'm just like, if you are listening to our podcast and you don't know Allie's siblings,
Those are their names.
Bobby and Liv, shout out. But we sat around and be like, we should take more videos. Like we should take more.
Yeah.
It was like all that stuff was so fascinating.
This is just really, this whole
love yourself,
episode was about feedback, and now it's actually about feedback about you.
Feedback yourself.
Yeah, right?
The other thing, I have to bring this up, but we
Okay.
had a client who has a food business, asked for like almost stock looking.
They said that they wanted their photos to look like stock photos.
That was like, they wanted it to be very sterile, and like that was what they were going for. And we did a shoot and we did that.
Yep.
We nailed that.
Yeah.
We pulled out, it was like, and then afterwards we delivered those photos. They were in the studio with us,
Yeah.
looking at approving the photos on a computer that you
Yep.
would edit, show them to them, and be like,
Yep.
yes, that's good.
Yep.
And then
they were like, we're not going to use these photos. Like, they're too much like stock photos.
like literally that was the words, like the words they asked for, and then they said it was too much like the word that they asked
And the
for.
funny thing is actually they use them now.
And then they
like
started
5
using
years
them.
later. It's almost
know.
like they were like, wait, our aesthetic is stock.
Yeah.
We have this amazing Dropbox folder filled with just what we
Who
need.
even? Yeah, it's like we wanted this.
So again, I think it goes back to what you do is not who you are. And the things that you're doing now will go out of style someday, or the style in which you take photos won't be cool and you'll get a do-over. Also, no one cares. So I think overall, there's like a lot of these like really encouraging phrases that I just said.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like
Yeah.
it's just not as big a deal as you think it is.
Yeah. If we can be, it doesn't.
And that's just my perspective. Everyone else is going to be different.
Even when we go through your personality type and we go through your like results and all of those different tests, we're like, oh, this is why you're
Yeah.
unique and you handle feedback differently than.
And
other
I have
people.
an opinion. Like, I for sure, if a client is taking the logo a way that I wouldn't, I have an opinion
Yeah.
deep down, but I have my own business. I can like enact a style or a thing and I get to approve it, you know?
Truth. I think the other thing that you do a good job of is you put in the work, and I think a lot of times they're put in the work of making something that is worth sharing, but then also put in the work of presenting that thing well, and that the presentation is not an afterthought.
True. I do think that I probably am, there's many millions of designers out there that are better than I am, but I do think that I present work well.
We spend hours in listening to clients too. I think that's the other thing is if you can't just if a client's like, hey, make me a logo, make it look cool.
It doesn't really resonate.
I like camo. Like you're probably not going to make that client happy.
No.
Like we spend a lot of time.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Doing a lot more.
And just like be present with people. Like eye contact is huge. No one wants you to present work and be like sweaty and like nervous, you know? Like they want to feel good and be like, this was a great experience. So
Yeah,
just like be chill.
try not to be too sweaty if you can avoid
Don't drink too much espresso before.
Truth.
Yes.
But still drink plenty of espresso. Mm-hmm. Shout out to espresso. Thank you all for listening. I love talking on a podcast with Allie. It's my favorite.
Aw.